Steam rose from the hoods of parked cars as the rain began to subside, leaving behind that characteristic smell of wet asphalt. Ethan Hayes adjusted the knot of his Brioni tie, observing his reflection in the window of a closed storefront. His fingers lightly touched the golden pin bearing the initials EEH, a gift from his late father, an ever-present reminder of the empire he now managed. The platinum watch on his wrist read 11:47 p.m. The rain-swept streets of Boston's financial district were nearly deserted, except for a few hurried pedestrians taking refuge beneath umbrellas. Ethan had just left yet another exhausting meeting with international investors. His driver, Harrison, had called to say he would be delayed by 15 minutes, enough time for a brief walk to clear his head. Then he heard it, a muffled sob. Ethan stopped, frowning. The sound came from a bench partially hidden by the shadow of an old elm tree. His Allen Edmonds shoes made a soft sound against the wet pavement as he approached cautiously. Two small figures huddled on the bench, clinging to each other like frightened kittens. The larger one, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, kept a protective arm around the smaller girl. Their dark hair was damp from the drizzle, and their faces were streaked with tears and grime. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. The older girl lifted her eyes upon sensing his presence, revealing deep blue irises that seemed to carry the weight of the world. She pulled the younger one even closer. "Are you all right?" Ethan asked softly, keeping a respectful distance. The smaller girl shivered visibly, and that was when he noticed their purple-tinted fingers from the cold and their soaked clothes. We're just resting," the older one replied, her small voice trying to sound braver than it was. "Daisy is a bit cold, but we're about to—" As if to contradict her, Daisy's stomach growled audibly in the stillness of the night. The older girl blushed, biting her lower lip. Ethan slowly knelt down so he was at their level. Up close, he could see the clear signs of exhaustion and fear on their young faces. How many hours had they been there? "My name is Ethan," he introduced himself with a gentle smile. "And you are?" The older girl hesitated, her eyes studying every inch of his face as if searching for danger. "I'm Lily," she finally answered, "and this is my sister, Daisy." Another tremor shook Daisy's little body, and Lily immediately removed her own thin, soaked jacket to cover her sister. The gesture tore at Ethan's heart. "Listen," he began, carefully choosing his words. "I live not far from here. There's hot chocolate, warm blankets, and—" He paused for effect, noticing how Daisy's eyes widened slightly at the mention of chocolate, freshly baked cookies. Lily frowned, distrust evident in her expression. Mom always said not to go with strangers. "Your mom is very wise," Ethan agreed. As if by a divine signal, his phone vibrated. It was Harrison, his driver, letting him know he was arriving. "Look, my car is coming. It's a black limousine with a uniformed driver. You can see it from a distance. If you don't feel safe, just say no, and I'll leave." The sisters exchanged a long look, having one of those silent conversations that only siblings can. Daisy sniffled, her tired eyes shifting between Ethan and Lily. The gentle hum of an engine cut through the night silence. Ethan's sleek black limousine slid along the wet street, coming to a smooth stop by the curb. Harrison, in his immaculate uniform and graying hair, stepped out with an umbrella. Mr. Hayes he greeted with a respectful nod, his experienced eyes quickly assessing the unusual situation. Lily watched everything closely, her small body still tense, but Ethan could see the battle in her eyes, fear wrestling with exhaustion and the need to protect her sister. "Harrison always has a few extra blankets in the car," Ethan commented casually. "And the heat is on." It was Daisy who decided for them. Shivering more strongly, she whispered something in Lily's ear, and after a few more seconds of hesitation, Lily slowly nodded. Can we see the car?" Lily asked, her voice still cautious. Ethan smiled, keeping a reassuring distance as the sisters rose from the bench. Daisy wobbled slightly, her legs numb from the cold and from sitting so long. Instinctively, Lily reached out to steady her, but her own legs nearly gave way as well. Harrison, with the efficiency of someone who'd served the Hayes family for decades, already had the rear door open. The limousine's interior lighting revealed heated leather seats and, as promised, a pile of soft blankets. "Ladies," the driver said with a small bow, prompting a shy giggle from Daisy. The girls approached slowly, Lily still tightly holding her sister's hand. As they got close enough to feel the warm air escaping from the car, Daisy let out a sigh of relief that broke Ethan's heart. "Are you sure?" Lily asked one last time, her blue eyes meeting Ethan's with a surprising intensity for someone so young. Ethan nodded solemnly. "Absolutely sure." After another moment of hesitation, Lily helped Daisy into the car, and both were soon wrapped in soft blankets. Ethan climbed in last, sitting across from them, giving them space. As the limousine glided through the rainy Boston night, Ethan watched the two little figures before him. Daisy was already fighting sleep, her head leaning against her sister's shoulder. Lily, though clearly exhausted, remained alert, occasionally meeting his gaze through the space between them. Ethan knew there were many questions to ask, many explanations needed, but for now, while the city lights danced on the tinted windows and the warmth finally began returning color to the girl's cheeks, he allowed himself just to feel that strange certainty that his life was about to change completely. And for the first time in a long while, the prospect of change didn't scare him. Hayes Manor emerged from the darkness like a beacon in the stormy night, its illuminated windows reflected in the rain puddles of the meticulously tended garden. Harrison guided the limousine up the circular driveway, coming to a stop beneath the main entrance portico. Ethan noticed Daisy had finally succumbed to sleep, her gentle and steady breathing against Lily's shoulder, who remained vigilant despite heavy eyelids. Before he could speak, the manor's heavy oak door opened, revealing Eleanor Hayes in her navy blue silk robe. "Ethan, dear, I was worried. Was the meeting?" Eleanor stopped mid-sentence upon seeing the two small figures bundled in blankets in the limousine's back seat. Her eyes, still sharp despite her age, immediately took in the situation. "Grandma," Ethan began, but Eleanor was already on the move, descending the steps with surprising agility for her 75 years. "Harrison, please let Mrs. Rodriguez know we need hot chocolate and a light snack," she instructed in a calm voice, approaching the car. "And let her know we'll need to prepare the pink room." Lily watched everything with wide eyes, especially when Eleanor leaned toward them with a smile that seemed to brighten her entire face. "Hello, sweetheart," Eleanor said gently to Lily. "I'm Eleanor, grandmother of this somewhat forgetful young man who probably forgot to introduce me properly." Her playful tone coaxed a small smile from Lily. I'm Lily," the girl answered timidly, "and this is Daisy." Eleanor nodded with seriousness. "Well, Lily and Daisy, how about we go inside?" "Oh, here. It's a terrible night to stay out here, and I bet you'd love a warm bath and dry clothes." Lily hesitated, glancing at Ethan as if seeking confirmation. He nodded encouragingly. "Daisy," Lily whispered, giving her sister a gentle shake. "Daisy, wake up." The younger girl stirred, blinking sleepily. Her eyes went wide momentarily at the sight of Eleanor, but something about the elderly woman's warm smile put her at ease almost immediately. With Ethan's help, the girl stepped out of the car. Daisy, still half asleep, stumbled slightly. Before Lily could catch her, Eleanor was already there, her gentle hand steadying the little girl. "Careful, darling," Eleanor murmured. "Come on, let's go inside." The foyer of Hayes Manor, with its marble floor and grand staircase, often intimidated visitors, but that night, with a fire crackling in the adjacent room and the aroma of hot chocolate in the air, it felt welcoming. Mrs. Rodriguez, the housekeeper who had served the family for 2 decades, was already waiting with warm towels and a motherly smile. "The bath is ready, Mrs. Eleanor, and the hot chocolate will be done in a few minutes." "Excellent, Maria," Eleanor replied. "Girls, Mrs. Rodriguez will help you with your bath, and then we'll have something warm to drink. How does that sound?" To Ethan's surprise, Daisy was the first to answer, her small but hopeful voice asking, "Do you have marshmallows?" Eleanor laughed, a musical sound that seemed to warm the entire room. "Of course, dear. Big and fluffy, just the way Ethan always liked them." Ethan's cheeks reddened slightly at the mention of his childhood love for marshmallows, but the shy smile Daisy gave him was worth that little embarrassment. Mrs. Rodriguez led the girls upstairs, Lily still firmly holding Daisy's hand. When they disappeared down the hallway, Eleanor turned to her grandson, her blue eyes, so much like his, filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Now, Ethan Hayes, what's this all about?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture his grandmother knew well. He always did that when processing something important. "I found them on a bench, Grandma, alone, cold, hungry. He paused, searching for words. "I couldn't leave them there." Eleanor touched her grandson's face tenderly. "Of course you couldn't. You have your father's heart," she paused meaningfully. "And I hope your grandmother's common sense. Have you contacted the authorities?" "Not yet. They were so scared, Grandma. I thought it best to earn their trust first." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "Wise. In the morning, we can—" A sharp cry cut her off. Within seconds, Ethan was taking the stairs 2 at a time, Eleanor right behind him with surprising agility. They found Lily in the hallway, tears streaming down her face, while Mrs. Rodriguez tried to calm her. Daisy clung to her sister, looking frightened. "What happened?" Ethan asked, his heart pounding. "The water?" Lily sobbed. I thought it was like before, when—" Eleanor approached calmly, kneeling in front of the girls despite her protesting knees. "It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe here." She opened her arms, and to everyone's surprise, Lily practically threw herself into them, sobbing against her shoulder. Ethan watched his grandmother gently rocking the girl, whispering words of comfort, while Daisy nestled in beside them. Something in his chest tightened at the sight. "Maria," Eleanor said quietly, "why don't you bring the hot chocolate to my room? I think we can skip the bath for tonight." The housekeeper nodded, slipping discreetly down the stairs. Eleanor continued to hold the girls until Lily's sobs subsided. "Come," she finally said, rising to her feet with some difficulty. "I have some old nightgowns from when my granddaughters used to visit. We can drink hot chocolate in my favorite armchair while I tell you stories about when Ethan was little. He always spilled marshmallows on his clothes. Did you know that?" Daisy let out a giggle, and Lily even managed a small smile through her tears. Ethan watched the 3 of them walk down the hall, his grandmother keeping the conversation light as she guided the girls to her room. Hours later, after the twins finally fell asleep in Eleanor's huge bed, Ethan found his grandmother in the library. She was seated in her favorite armchair, an old photo album on her lap. "They need us, Ethan," Eleanor said without looking up from the album. "At least for now." Ethan approached, noticing she was looking at a photo of him at 5 years old, covered in chocolate and marshmallow. "Are you sure, Grandma? Isn't this a huge responsibility?" Eleanor finally lifted her gaze, and Ethan recognized that determined look that had made her one of the most respected women in Boston society. "Age has brought me many things, dear. Wisdom, I hope. Patience, certainly. But above all, it has taught me to recognize when destiny places something or someone in our path for a reason." Ethan nodded slowly, thinking of the 2 little figures sleeping upstairs. "Temporarily, then, until we learn more about their situation." Eleanor smiled, closing the album gently. "Temporarily," she agreed, though there was something in her tone suggesting she knew more than she was letting on. "Now, go get some rest, dear. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." As he climbed the stairs to his room, Ethan couldn't help feeling his grandmother was right, as she usually was. Fate had its own plans, and sometimes all we can do is open our hearts and trust. Friday afternoon dragged on with the slow pace typical of important days. Ethan could barely focus on his laptop screen, his mind constantly wandering to the two young guests now living at Hayes Manor. After 3 days of endless meetings, he was finally heading home early. The gentle sound of the limousine's tires on the circular driveway brought an involuntary smile to his lips. Through the window, he spotted Eleanor in the garden, supervising while Lily helped the gardener plant tulips. The girl had dirt smudges on her cheeks and a genuine smile on her face, a sight that was becoming more and more frequent. "Welcome home, Mr. Hayes," Harrison said, opening the car door. Ethan was about to reply when a small blur dashed toward him. "Ethan!" Daisy shouted, her dark curls bouncing with every step. She stopped abruptly in front of him, her hands hidden behind her back, a mysterious look on her round little face. "Hello there," he smiled, crouching to her level. "What are you up to?" Daisy bit her lip, quickly glancing over her shoulder to see if anyone was paying attention. Satisfied with their privacy, she brought her hands forward. In her small, rosy palm rested an old bronze key, tarnished with age. It had an intricate design at the end, something vaguely resembling a rose entwined with vines. Ethan frowned, intrigued. "Where did you find this, Daisy?" The girl pressed the key to her chest, her eyes wide and serious. "It's important," she whispered, as though sharing a precious secret. "Important how?" Ethan asked gently, noticing how her little fingers curled protectively around the object. "I don't know," Daisy admitted after a moment of hesitation. "But I can feel it. Here." She tapped her own chest, over her heart, with a seriousness that seemed beyond her young age. Ethan studied her expression, trying to understand. Daisy had always seemed the more carefree of the two sisters, always ready with a smile or a laugh, but now there was something different in her eyes, a flicker of recognition perhaps. Could you keep it for me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Lily doesn't like it when I talk about the key. It makes her sad." The mention of Lily made Ethan look back at the garden. The other twin was still absorbed in her tasks among the flowers, seemingly oblivious to the conversation happening near the entrance. "Of course I can," he replied, extending his hand. Daisy placed the key in his palm with surprising delicacy. The metal felt warm from her touch. "Promise you'll take good care of it. I promise." Ethan lifted his pinky finger, and Daisy hooked hers around it with a relieved smile. "Now, how about we go see what your sister is doing in the garden?" Daisy nodded excitedly, returning to her usual 5-year-old self. She grabbed Ethan's hand and pulled him toward the garden, already chattering about the tulips Eleanor had promised would bloom in spring. Later, alone in his office, Ethan studied the key under the lamplight. It was heavier than it looked at first glance, and definitely old. The metalwork on the end was too intricate for a simple door key. It looked more like a decorative piece, perhaps part of a larger set. He turned it between his fingers, watching how the light played on the worn engravings. Where had it come from? What did it open? And why did Daisy consider it so important? Ethan opened the top drawer of his desk, the one he kept locked. Inside was a small, carved wooden box, a gift from his father. Carefully, he placed the key on the box's black velvet lining, closing the lid. A sudden memory flashed through his mind. Daisy touching her chest and saying she felt the key's importance here. The gesture had seemed so natural, so familiar. Ethan leaned back in his chair, recalling the last few days. The twins had surprisingly adapted well to the manor's routine. Eleanor seemed more alive than ever, busy showering the girls with stories and treats. Even the staff appeared enchanted by the new residents. But there were moments, brief, fleeting moments, when a shadow crossed Lily's face, or Daisy grew inexplicably quiet. moments in which both girls seemed to bear a burden too heavy for their tiny shoulders. The sound of childish laughter drifted in through the office window. Ethan rose and walked to it, looking down at the garden. Eleanor sat in her favorite swing, Lily and Daisy on either side, the three apparently absorbed in some amusing story. The key weighed on his mind. What was its story? And why had Daisy chosen to trust him, of all people, with something she deemed so precious? A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he called, turning around. Mrs. Rodriguez peeked into the office. "Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Hayes, but dinner is served, and Miss Daisy insists we cannot start without you." Ethan smiled, casting a final glance at the locked drawer before following the housekeeper. The answers would come in time. For now, there was dinner to share and two little hosts waiting for him. As he descended the stairs, he couldn't help thinking that maybe the key wasn't the only mystery he needed to unravel. There was something special about these girls, something beyond their unusual situation and the fate that had brought them to the Hayes' doorstep. The soft clink of cutlery and cheerful chatter greeted him in the dining room. Daisy waved excitedly upon seeing him, her face lighting up. Lily smiled too, more reserved, but just as sincere. And Eleanor, well, she watched him with that knowing look that always made him wonder how much his grandmother really knew. Ethan took his seat at the table, leaving mysteries for another moment. After all, sometimes the most important answers don't come from ancient keys or well-kept secrets, but from simple moments shared with those who, in some inexplicable way, have become family. 1 week turned into 2, and Hayes Manor gradually gained new life. The sound of little feet echoed through once quiet halls, and childish laughter filled spaces long forgotten. Ethan observed these changes with a mix of fascination and caution. Daisy's key, kept in his desk, seemed to pulse with unanswered questions. He found himself examining the manor's old locks during his nightly walks, wondering if any of them concealed secrets related to that mysterious object. On that Sunday morning, as he savored his coffee on the veranda, Ethan watched Eleanor conducting what she called a lesson in etiquette. Daisy, wearing a light blue dress chosen by Grandma, tried to balance a book on her head while walking. The book fell for the 3rd time, triggering a burst of laughter. "Grandma Eleanor," Daisy asked through giggles, "why do people have to walk around with books on their heads?" "For proper posture, my dear," Eleanor replied with a patient smile, adjusting the ribbon in the girl's hair. "Though nowadays it's more important to balance a good heart than a book." Lily, watching everything from her spot near the rose garden, lifted her eyes from the book she was reading. Her interests differed from her sister's. While Daisy loved Grandma's lessons, Lily preferred losing herself among the pages of the Hayes' vast library. Ethan smiled as he noticed she was reading The Secret Garden, an interesting choice for a girl who harbored her own mysteries. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with a tray of freshly baked cookies, and Daisy immediately abandoned her lesson to rush toward the snack. Lily carefully closed her book before joining her sister. "They're blooming," Eleanor commented, coming closer to Ethan, "like my roses in spring." Ethan nodded, thoughtful. "But there are still thorns, Grandma. Times when they clam up, especially Lily. Every rose has its thorns, dear. It's their way of protecting themselves until they feel safe enough to fully bloom." The wisdom in Eleanor's words made Ethan think of the key again. Perhaps it was one of those thorns, a secret the girls carried as protection. The sound of piano music interrupted his thoughts. Harrison had turned on the old sound system, and Chopin's gentle notes drifted through the air. Daisy immediately began spinning around, scattering cookie crumbs everywhere. "Mom used to play the piano," Lily remarked quietly, so softly that only Ethan, who was nearby, could hear. It was the first time either of the girls had voluntarily mentioned their parents. Ethan shared a significant look with Eleanor, who discreetly signaled him not to press the matter. "We have a piano in the music room," he commented casually. "No one's used it for years." Lily's eyes widened slightly. There's a room just for music? Oh, yes, Eleanor interjected smoothly. Ethan used to have lessons there as a child. He was terrible, I must admit. Grandma, Ethan protested, making the girls laugh. Can we see it? Lily asked, a spark of genuine interest in her eyes. Ethan stood, extending his hand. Sure, why not now? The music room was located in the west wing of the manor, an elegant space with floor-to-ceiling windows and perfect acoustics. A Steinway grand piano held the place of honor, its black finish reflecting the morning light. Lily approached the instrument with reverence, her small fingers lightly touching the yellowed keys. Daisy, meanwhile, was more interested in the red velvet curtains. "Look, Lily," she called, wrapping herself in the heavy fabric. "I look like a princess." But Lily was lost in her own world, her eyes fixed on the piano keys. Ethan noticed she placed her fingers in the correct hand position. Someone had definitely taught her something. "Do you play?" he asked gently. Lily took a step back, as though waking from a dream. "Mom was teaching me," she answered, her voice trembling slightly. Eleanor, watching from the doorway, chimed in with her usual grace. "Well, I think it's time to bring this room back to life. How about we start with a few piano lessons?" Lily's face lit up for a moment before a familiar shadow crossed her features. "We don't want to be a bother." "A bother?" Eleanor laughed softly. "My dear, music is never a bother. It's soul, and this house has been quiet for far too long." Ethan watched the scene, feeling something stir in his chest. Hayes Manor had always been grand, imposing, a symbol of his family's legacy. But now, seeing Daisy dance with the curtains while Lily tried out a few hesitant notes on the piano, he realized that perhaps a home's true greatness isn't in its architecture or history, but in the living moments it holds. In his pocket, the key weighed like a reminder. How many other secrets did the manor hide? How many stories waited to be discovered behind long-closed doors? For now, while Eleanor began teaching a simple song to Lily and Daisy tried to mimic her sister's fingers on the keys, Ethan decided some mysteries could wait. After all, sometimes the most important discoveries happen not when we go looking for them, but when we allow life to find its own rhythm. Morning turned into afternoon, and the music room, silent for so long, was filled with hesitant notes, laughter, and the occasional wrong key. It was a new melody in the Hayes Manor Symphony, imperfect perhaps, but perfectly theirs. Ethan's office was bathed in golden evening light when he found the first photo. He was rummaging through old manor floor plans, searching for clues about doors or hidden compartments the mysterious key might unlock, when a yellowed envelope slipped from between the pages. In the photograph, a 5-year-old Ethan smiled with 2 missing front teeth, seated on the same garden swing where Eleanor now told stories to the twins. His father, Robert Hayes, was beside him, wearing that gentle smile Ethan missed so much. "I thought I'd find you here." Ethan looked up to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, that knowing look on her face. "The girls?" he asked discreetly, slipping the manor plans beneath other papers. "Sleeping?" "Daisy insisted on wearing that unicorn pajama we bought, even though it's way too big," Eleanor said, walking closer. Her eyes caught the old photo in his hand. "Ah, I remember that day. Your father had just installed the swing." Ethan ran his fingers over the worn surface of the photo. "They remind me of this time, Grandma. The way Daisy laughs at everything, the way Lily always tries to act older than she is." "Like you used to be," Eleanor completed softly, settling into the armchair near his desk. "Especially after your parents." She let the sentence trail off. A muffled scream from upstairs froze them both. Within moments, Ethan heard the quick footsteps in the hallway, signaling the twins were awake and on the move. Seconds later, Lily appeared in the office doorway, breathless. Daisy had a nightmare, she explained, her wide eyes pleading for help. Ethan didn't hesitate. In just a few steps, he was in the hallway, climbing the stairs with Lily close behind. They found Daisy curled up in the big pink bed, quietly sobbing. "Hey, little one," Ethan called gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Want to talk about it?" Daisy shook her head but flung herself into his arms, burying her face in his chest. Ethan instinctively held her, his hand drawing soft circles on her back. Lily climbed onto the bed from the other side, torn between concern for her sister and something else. Maybe surprise at how naturally Ethan handled the situation. "When I was little," Ethan began in a comforting, low voice, "my mom used to sing whenever I had nightmares. She wasn't very good at it, to be honest, but it worked." A sob that sounded almost like laughter escaped Daisy. "Our mom used to sing, too," Lily said softly, her fingers fiddling with the hem of her pajama. "She knew all the Disney songs." Ethan felt Daisy tense up for a moment before relaxing again in his arms. It was the second time the girls had mentioned their mother voluntarily. "How about we make a deal?" he suggested. "I can't promise to sing as well as your Disney songs, but I can stay here until you both fall asleep." "Promise?" Daisy asked, her voice still shaky. "Pinky swear," Ethan offered, causing both girls to smile at the familiar ritual they'd adopted. From the door, Eleanor watched with tearful eyes. Ethan, sitting on the bed with a twin on each side, reminded her so much of Robert with Ethan when he was small. Silently, she left them to their moment. Later, when the girls finally fell asleep, Ethan returned to his office. The key still intrigued him, but now there was something more urgent on his mind. In 3 weeks, the twins had become more than temporary guests. They were part of his life in a way he hadn't expected. By day, between meetings and phone calls, he found himself wondering what they were doing. He saved funny stories to tell them at dinner, knowing they would make Daisy laugh. He'd started noticing which books Lily liked best, secretly ordering others from the same authors. His gaze fell on the old photo on his desk. His father always said family was more than blood. It was choice, it was care, it was love, built day by day. Hayes Manor, which for so long had been only a shell of old memories, now thrummed with new energy. The once empty halls now held whispered secrets between sisters, shared laughter, and the soft patter of small footsteps. Ethan picked up the key from his drawer, examining it under the lamp's glow. Perhaps the real mystery wasn't what it unlocked, but what it had already opened. His own heart, which he hadn't realized was closed. A soft sound made him look up. Eleanor stood in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of tea. "I thought we needed to talk," she said, setting a cup in front of him. Ethan nodded, putting the key away. Some pursuits could wait. Now he needed to discuss something more important with his grandmother. The future of 2 little girls who, without warning or planning, had become the center of his world. Steam rose from the tea between them, and outside, night embraced Hayes Manor in its familiar stillness. Upstairs, 2 sisters slept peacefully, their dreams now guarded by new protectors who, day by day, were learning the true meaning of family. Hayes Manor kept its secrets like a lady guards her jewels, with dignity and discretion. By day it was a lively residence, full of life and children's laughter. But at night, when everyone slept, its hallways whispered ancient stories only Ethan seemed to hear. It was another one of those nights when sleep eluded him. Carrying an old lantern in one hand and the mysterious key in the other, Ethan roamed the manor's 3rd floor. The thick carpet muffled his steps as he examined each lock, each door, searching for something he couldn't define. "What are you hiding?" he murmured to the key, watching how the lantern's light made the intricate bronze vines dance. A month had passed since Daisy had given it to him, and each passing day only heightened the mystery rather than solved it. A creak in the floorboards made him pause. Through the hallway window, the full moon cast elongated shadows on the floor, turning familiar objects into mysterious shapes. During the day, these same shadows were Daisy's favorite playground. She loved to create stories about friendly monsters hiding in dark corners. Lily, in contrast, preferred the bright spaces of the library, where she spent hours leafing through family albums with Eleanor. The memory of the girls brought a smile to his lips, even as his fingers continued their nightly ritual of testing locks. He had tried the key in dozens of doors, cabinets, and trunks, but none seemed to be the right fit. A different sound caught his attention, light footsteps descending the main staircase. Switching off the lantern, Ethan moved silently to see the hall below. Eleanor, in her navy blue silk robe, led Lily by the hand toward the kitchen. The girl looked as though she'd been crying, her shoulders still shaking slightly. "A cup of hot chocolate always helps with nightmares," Eleanor's gentle voice floated up to him. "Did you know Ethan's father had nightmares when he was little?" Ethan leaned closer to the balustrade, intrigued. He had never heard this story about his father. "Really?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Oh, yes. Robert, that was his name, used to dream of locked doors. He said there were important treasures behind them, but he never found the right keys." Ethan felt the key in his hand grow warm, or perhaps it was just his imagination. "What happened?" Lily asked, her voice steadier now. "Well, one day he realized that the real treasures weren't behind locked doors, but right in front of him. Like now, the treasure is in this cup of hot chocolate and in the company of a very special young lady." The soft sound of Lily's laughter echoed through the quiet manor, making Ethan smile despite himself. When their footsteps finally retreated toward the bedrooms, Ethan remained pensive. His obsession with the key was starting to affect his sleep, his routines. During important meetings, he caught himself doodling the vine pattern on the edges of his documents. The night before, he'd spent hours in the attic, rummaging through old boxes and trunks. He found old photos, yellowed letters, even the diary of his great-grandmother, but nothing connected to the mysterious key. A distant clock chimed 2 a.m. Ethan sighed, slipping the key into his robe pocket. Perhaps his grandmother was right. Maybe the true treasures didn't need searching for. Still, as he headed back to his room, his eyes swept the ancient walls, studying every detail and crack. Hayes Manor was built at a time when secrets were kept in hidden compartments and secret passages. Somewhere, he knew, there was a lock waiting for that specific key. Passing the girl's bedroom, Ethan paused at the sound of hushed voices. "You dreamt about her again?" Daisy asked. "Shh," Lily replied. "It's all right now." Grandma Eleanor made hot chocolate, like Mom used to. A moment of silence. Different, but good too. Ethan quietly retreated, his heart clenched. The girls rarely spoke of their old life, and he respected that silence. But occasionally, in moments like this, he glimpsed what they had lost or left behind. Back in his room, Ethan placed the key in its usual box. The metal glinted under the lamp, as if mocking his fruitless search. "What are you trying to tell me?" he murmured, closing the box lid. Lying in bed, watching shadows dance on the ceiling, Ethan thought of his own childhood at the manor. How many secrets did these old walls hold? How many stories waited to be discovered? Sleep finally overtook him, bringing hazy images of endless hallways and locked doors. But before he drifted off completely, one thought passed through his mind. Perhaps the real mystery wasn't what the key opened, but why Daisy had chosen him, of all people, to keep it safe. Outside, the moon continued its silent vigil over Hayes Manor, while its inhabitants slept, each carrying their own secrets, their own keys, their own unopened doors. The soft sound of the piano drifted through the halls of Hayes Manor like a gentle breeze. Lily, focused on the keys before her, was playing a simplified version of Clair de Lune with surprising precision for someone so young. Her small hands moved with growing confidence while Eleanor watched proudly. "She has a natural gift," her piano teacher, Ms. Dubois, whispered to Ethan, who had paused his endless manor search when he heard the music. "In 30 years of teaching, I've seldom seen such sensitivity in someone so young." Ethan nodded, noticing how Lily seemed transformed at the piano. Lighter, freer. It was as though music unlocked something inside her, just as he hoped the mysterious key would unlock, well, Whatever it was, meant to open. On the other side of the room, Daisy sat on the windowsill, legs dangling in the air, as she doodled in a sketch pad. Since Eleanor had discovered her passion for art, the little one was never without her drawing materials. "Look, Ethan," Daisy called, holding up her latest drawing. "It's the manor." Ethan approached, impressed by the level of detail captured by a 5-year-old. Hayes Manor was there, with its arched windows and imposing towers, but there was something else, details he didn't remember noticing. "What's this here?" he asked, pointing to a peculiar line Daisy had drawn near the west wing. "It's a secret door," Daisy replied excitedly. "I found it when playing hide-and-seek with Harrison yesterday." Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. "A secret door?" "Uh-huh. There's a panel in the wall that goes click when you push it." Eleanor, who had come over to see the drawing, exchanged a meaningful look with Ethan. "Hayes Manor has always been full of surprises," she said. When Ethan was little, he loved searching for secret passages. "He still does," Daisy added innocently, making Ethan blush. Apparently, his nightly explorations weren't as discreet as he thought. The music stopped, and Lily joined them, her eyes shining from the pleasure of a successful performance. "That was lovely, dear," Eleanor praised, hugging the girl. Then, as if struck by a sudden idea, she added, "You know, I think it's time we gave this manor a special touch. How about we create a space just for you two?" The twins looked at each other, surprised and curious. "The East Wing has several rooms we haven't used in years," Eleanor went on. "We could turn one into an art studio for Daisy, with easels and all the colors she wants. And another into a proper music room for Lily, with the perfect acoustics." "Really?" Daisy asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "Of course," Ethan replied, finding himself infected by his grandmother's enthusiasm. Actually, he paused, recalling something. "I think I know just the place." Later, after the girls had gone to bed, Ethan led Eleanor to a set of rooms in the East Wing's 3rd floor. During his nightly searches for the key's lock, he had rediscovered these forgotten spaces. "The twin rooms," Eleanor whispered, recognition dawning. "I'd forgotten all about them." The 2 rooms were identical in size and shape, connected by a central door and featuring large arched windows overlooking the garden. Years of disuse had left a layer of dust over shrouded furniture, but the original grandeur remained evident. "Robert and his brother used to play here," Eleanor continued, touching an old picture frame on the wall. "They were your twin uncles," she explained to Ethan, "before the accident." Ethan knew the story. His uncles had died young in a car accident years before he was born. His father rarely spoke of them. "I think it's time these rooms had life again," Eleanor said with resolve. "Daisy can take the one that gets the morning light, perfect for painting. Lily can have the afternoon light for her piano sessions." As they discussed renovation details, Ethan noticed something curious on the baseboard. Kneeling down, he ran his fingers over an almost invisible carving. "Grandma, look at this!" Eleanor approached, adjusting her glasses. "Ah, yes, the twins' passage. Your uncles discovered it by accident when they were 6. There's a system of tunnels connecting various parts of the manor. Robert claimed it was for emergencies, but I suspect it was built more for whimsy than necessity." Ethan felt the key grow heavy in his pocket. "Could it be?" "The girls will love it," Eleanor continued, seemingly unaware of her grandson's excitement. "We can keep the passage as a special surprise after the rooms are ready, of course." In the days that followed, Hayes Manor bustled with the energy of renovation. Daisy spent hours discussing color schemes with the decorator, while Lily studied piano catalogs with adorable seriousness. Ethan split his time between supervising the work and exploring the newly discovered tunnel system. Each night brought new discoveries. A hidden staircase here, a secret closet there. But no lock seemed to match Daisy's key. One particularly busy afternoon, while overseeing the delivery of Lily's new piano, Ethan heard a familiar melody from the garden. Daisy was sitting under a tree, humming as she drew, while Lily practiced scales at the open window above. He paused to take in the natural ease with which the twins had integrated into life at the manor. Their talents were blossoming like Eleanor's roses, nurtured by the love and care they received. Hayes Manor, which had long been only a shell of old memories, was now alive with new purpose. Everywhere there were signs of the small changes the twins had brought. Daisy's drawings taped to the fridge, Lily's sheet music scattered through the library, laughter echoing in once silent corridors. And perhaps, Ethan thought as he watched the setting sun gild the manor's ancient stone walls, some doors didn't need keys to open. Some simply opened on their own when the time and the heart were ready. The Hayes Manor attic was a world unto itself, suspended in time and covered by decades of dust. Ethan had been putting off this exploration, partly due to the effort required to sort through so many years of accumulated family history, partly because something about the space intimidated him. But that Sunday afternoon, while the twins played in the garden under Eleanor's watchful eye, he finally mustered the courage to climb the narrow staircase leading to the manor's last unexplored refuge. The old wood creaked under his feet as he pushed open the hatch. The air was thick, filled with the peculiar scent of old memories, cedar, aged paper, and stagnant time. Ethan switched on his lantern, its beam dancing among shapes draped in white sheets, creating shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. "Let's see what you're hiding," he muttered to the silent space, taking out the key from his pocket. After weeks of fruitless searching, it had become a constant presence against his chest, like a talisman. Methodically, Ethan began exploring the vast attic. There were old furniture pieces under sheets, stacks of framed pictures, trunks, and boxes labeled with the elegant handwriting of various Hayes generations. Each item seemed to tell a story, to guard a secret. One particularly large mirror caught his eye. Pulling off the sheet, Ethan saw his reflection in its time-stained surface. For a moment, he thought he saw his father's image. He had always resembled Robert, but now, with the worries of the past weeks etched into his face, the similarity was almost unsettling. The sound of childish laughter floated up through the small attic window, reminding him of the present. Downstairs, Daisy was probably showing her latest artworks to Eleanor while Lily practiced her music. Incredible how in such a short time the twins had become an integral part of their lives. Moving further into the attic, Ethan started finding older objects. A porcelain doll with a dress yellowed by time, a photo album so fragile it threatened to fall apart at a touch, a music box that hadn't played a note in decades. That was when he saw it. Partially hidden behind a stack of old suitcases stood a trunk unlike the others. It wasn't particularly large or ornate, but there was something about it that grabbed his attention at once. Maybe it was the dark wood, almost black in color, or the bronze details forming a pattern that looked strangely familiar. Ethan's heart pounded. Holding the lantern closer, he examined the metal carvings on the trunk's lid. Delicate vines entwined, forming designs reminiscent of roses, exactly like the key Daisy had given him. With trembling fingers, he removed the key from his pocket. The metal seemed to warm in his hand as he brought it closer to the lock. The resemblance in design was now undeniable. "Could it be?" he whispered, aligning the key with the lock. It fit perfectly. For a moment, Ethan just knelt there, frozen, the key inserted in the lock, but not yet turned. After weeks of searching, the discovery felt almost too surreal. A ray of sunlight pierced the attic's small stained-glass window, illuminating motes of dust dancing like tiny stars in the air. The moment felt suspended in time, loaded with possibilities and mysteries still unknown. Finally, summoning his courage, Ethan turned the key. The lock mechanism moved with surprising smoothness, as though it had been freshly oiled. A soft click echoed in the silence of the attic. Ethan held his breath as he lifted the trunk's lid. The interior was lined with faded red velvet, still luxurious to the touch. There, neatly arranged, were several items that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. An old fairy tale book, its leather cover worn from frequent use, a yellowed envelope bearing an elegant handwriting he didn't recognize, a small bronze music box decorated with the same rose and vine pattern as the key. And at the bottom of the trunk, something that made Ethan gasp, a photograph. In it, two little girls smiled at the camera, dressed in identical outfits. They could have easily been Lily and Daisy, except the photo was clearly decades old. Ethan flipped the picture over with trembling hands. On the back, in careful handwriting, it said, Abigail and Grace Hayes, 1955. Ethan, Eleanor's voice echoed from the attic stairs, making him jump. Are you all right up there? The girls are asking for you to join them for afternoon tea. Ethan looked at the items spread before him, his mind reeling with questions. Who were Abigail and Grace Hayes? Why did Daisy have the key to this trunk? And what connection did this have to the twins? I'm coming down, Grandma, he replied, his voice slightly hoarse. Carefully, he put everything back inside, closing the trunk with the key. There was so much to explore, but something told him he needed to tread carefully. Descending the attic stairs, Ethan found Eleanor in the hallway, her face a mix of curiosity and concern. Did you find anything interesting up there? She asked, studying his expression. Ethan hesitated. For a reason he couldn't explain, he felt he should keep the trunk's discovery a secret for now. Just some old memories, he answered vaguely. Eleanor watched him for a moment longer than necessary, as though she could see through his vague reply. But before she could comment, Daisy came running down the hallway. Ethan, you promised to see my new painting before tea. He smiled, scooping the little girl into his arms. And since when do I break my promises, huh? Following Daisy to her new art studio, Ethan felt the weight of the key in his pocket. The trunk's mystery would have to wait. For now, there was a painting to admire and afternoon tea to share. But later, when the manor was quiet, he would return to the attic. Because now he knew the key wasn't just some curious trinket given by a child. It was a doorway to a much bigger mystery, one that might explain why fate had brought Lily and Daisy to Hayes Manor. That night, Ethan waited until the last sound of footsteps in the manor's corridors had faded. Dinner had been as usual, Daisy enthusiastically talking about her paintings, Lily sharing her piano progress, Eleanor smiling with maternal pride. But the discovery in the attic weighed heavily on his mind. As soon as the manor fell completely silent, he took the key and climbed the attic stairs once more. The full moon bathed the stained glass window in silver light, creating ghostly patterns on the dusty floor. The trunk was exactly where he'd left it, partially hidden behind the old suitcases. Ethan knelt before it, inserting the key into the lock with steadier hands this time. The soft click seemed to echo in the quiet space. Carefully removing the items he'd found earlier, the storybook, the music box, the mysterious photo, Ethan noticed something he hadn't seen before. In the trunk's bottom lining, almost imperceptible, was a small flap in the red velvet. His heart pounded as his fingers found the fabric's edge. Gently he tugged, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside there was only one yellowed envelope, sealed with red wax bearing the Hayes family crest. The wax broke easily under his trembling fingers. Inside was a single document, the blue ink still surprisingly vivid against the aged paper. The first words brought his world to a halt. Certificate of adoption. Ethan blinked several times, as if the words might change if he stared long enough. But there they were, undeniable in their simple starkness. Name of child, Ethan Hayes, formerly Ethan Carter. Date of birth, March 15, 1990. Adoptive parents, Robert and Catherine Hayes. Adoption date, December 12, 1990. The document continued with legal details and official signatures, but Ethan could barely process the information. His hands shook so badly that the paper rustled in the attic silence. Adopted. The word echoed in his mind like a jarring bell. Memories flashed before his eyes like a rapid slideshow. His father, Robert, always so protective. His mother, Catherine, with that adoring gaze that now took on a whole new meaning. "Eleanor." Ethan stood abruptly, nearly knocking the trunk over. Eleanor would know. Eleanor always knew everything. He descended the attic stairs like a ghost, the document clenched in his hand. His feet carried him automatically to the library, where he knew he'd find his grandmother. No, not his biological grandmother, he bitterly corrected himself. As expected, Eleanor was in her favorite armchair, a book open on her lap, and a cup of now-cold tea beside her. She looked up when Ethan entered, and something in his expression must have revealed the storm inside him, because she immediately closed the book. "You knew." It wasn't a question. Eleanor didn't reply at once. Instead, she studied the crumpled document in his hand, her face calm in a way only decades of high society experience could manage. "Sit down, Ethan," she said softly. "I don't want to sit." His voice came out louder than intended, and he instantly lowered it, mindful of the sleeping girls upstairs. 35 years, Grandma." "No, Eleanor, 35 years of lies." "They were never lies, Ethan," Eleanor responded, her voice firm but gentle. "You were always a haze. Blood is just one of many kinds of truth." Ethan let out a humorless laugh, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "Really? What other truths were conveniently withheld? Who are my biological parents? Why was I adopted? Why did no one ever tell me?" Eleanor exhaled deeply, and for the first time, Ethan noticed the weight of her years in her posture. "Your parents, Robert and Catherine, wanted to tell you when you turned 18. But then," her voice faltered slightly, "then the accident happened, and you were already suffering so much." Ethan felt his legs weaken and finally allowed himself to collapse into the armchair across from Eleanor. "The accident? His parents had died in a car crash when he was 17, just months before his 18th birthday. After that," Eleanor continued, "it fell on me to tell you. But you were so determined to honor your father's legacy, so focused on proving yourself a true Hayes. Perhaps I was a coward, but I couldn't take that away from you as well. And my biological parents." Eleanor hesitated. "Emily Carter was very young when she had you. She made the choice she believed was best for her child." Emily. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. "How?" "Yes," Eleanor confirmed gently. "Like little Daisy upstairs. She's the one who found the key, isn't she?" Ethan nodded mechanically, his mind still trying to process everything. In the trunk, there was also an old photograph. 2 girls, Abigail and Grace Hayes. "My sisters," Eleanor revealed. "Twins, like Lily and Daisy. They died very young in a fire. After that tragedy, your grandparents, your adoptive grandparents, decided to turn Hayes Manor into a place of second chances. When Robert and Catherine couldn't have children, and then the opportunity arose to adopt a special baby." "Why did Daisy have the key?" Ethan interrupted, a suspicion forming in his mind. Eleanor gave a sad smile. "Sometimes fate has a peculiar sense of humor, or perhaps it's the universe trying to correct its own circles. Daisy found the key because we needed you to discover the truth now, because those 2 little girls upstairs need someone who understands, better than anyone, that family is much more than blood." Ethan felt warm tears sliding down his cheeks. "So when I found them on that bench, it wasn't a coincidence?" "Just like it wasn't a coincidence Robert and Catherine found you," Eleanor finished. "Hayes Manor has always had a gift for bringing lost souls together." A heavy silence settled over the library. Outside, the night carried on, oblivious to the revelations that had just upended Ethan's world. Did they love me? The question escaped his lips before he could stop it, his voice sounding strangely small. Eleanor stood, crossing the space between them to hold Ethan's face in her hands. "Oh, my dear boy, they loved you more than life itself. You were their greatest treasure, their greatest joy. Never, not for a second, doubt that." Ethan closed his eyes, letting the tears flow freely now. He felt Eleanor's arms around him, the same comforting embrace she'd given him as a child when he had nightmares. "What about me?" he whispered against her shoulder. "Am I still?" "You will always be my grandson," Eleanor declared firmly. "You will always be a Hayes." Some truths go far beyond blood, Ethan, and you're about to discover that with Lily and Daisy. Ethan pulled back slightly, wiping his face. "How can I look at them now, knowing we've been keeping such secrets? The same way you always have, with love. And when the time is right, you'll know what to say, just as Robert and Catherine would have if they'd had the chance." A soft sound at the door made them turn. Daisy stood there, clutching her unicorn plush toy to her chest, looking sleepy but worried. "Ethan?" she asked timidly. "Are you crying?" He opened his arms automatically, and Daisy ran into his lap. "It's okay, little one," he whispered, inhaling the scent of her child shampoo. "Sometimes grown-ups cry when they find out important things." "Sad things?" she asked against his chest. "No," Ethan replied after a moment, surprised by the truth in his own words. "Things that make our hearts grow a little bigger." Eleanor watched the scene with glistening eyes, and Ethan realized she was right. Family was much more than blood. It was something you built with love day by day in moments like this. As he rocked Daisy back to sleep, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Learning about his adoption didn't change who he was. Perhaps it helped him understand his own heart better. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what Lily and Daisy needed. Someone who understood firsthand that the strongest bonds aren't always the ones we're born with, but those we choose to create. The sun had barely risen when Ethan returned to the library. He hadn't been able to sleep, his mind swirling with unanswered questions and memories now seen through a new lens. Eleanor was already there, as if waiting for him, a tray of steaming tea between them. Catherine cried for 3 days when she found out she couldn't have children, Eleanor began abruptly, pouring tea into 2 porcelain cups. Robert found her in the rose garden, devastated. They had tried for 5 years. Ethan sat down, accepting the cup with slightly trembling hands. "Why did I never suspect? How did I not realize?" "Because they made sure you never had reason to doubt," Eleanor answered softly. "Catherine decorated the nursery throughout your biological mother's pregnancy. Robert visited the orphanage every week, bringing gifts and making plans. When they finally brought you home..." She smiled at the memory. "I've never seen 2 people more complete." "Tell me about my biological mother," Ethan asked, his voice almost a whisper. Eleanor adjusted herself in the chair. "Emily Carter was 16. She came from a simple family in the countryside. When she found out she was pregnant, her parents sent her to a home for single mothers in New York. That's where Catherine met her. She did volunteer work there." Ethan closed his eyes, trying to imagine. "And my biological father?" Emily never revealed who he was. She said only that he was very young and not ready to be a father. Eleanor paused, sipping her tea. Catherine spent hours talking to Emily, helping her plan for the future. "It was Emily who chose your parents, you know." She chose?" "Oh, yes. She said there was something special about Catherine and Robert, a genuine kindness. She wanted her baby to have not just material comfort, but true love." Eleanor smiled sadly. Emily was very wise for someone so young. Ethan stood abruptly, walking to the window. The garden below was waking under the first rays of sunlight. "They never thought I had the right to know? Never considered that I deserved the truth?" "Of course they did, dear. As I said last night, they planned to tell you when you turned 18. Eleanor sighed. Robert kept all of Emily's letters from her pregnancy in that trunk. He wanted you to know how much you were loved from the start, by everyone. "Letters?" Ethan turned quickly. "I didn't see any letters in the trunk. There must be another secret compartment." Robert was meticulous with important things. Eleanor stood with some difficulty, moving closer. But Ethan, you have to understand. Your parents didn't keep this from you out of shame or fear. They just wanted you to grow up feeling completely part of the family, with no shadow of doubt about your place among us. But I'm not really a Hayes, Ethan murmured, more to himself than to Eleanor. Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor scolded firmly, surprising him. You're more of a Hayes than many who carry the name by blood. You have Robert's kindness, Catherine's strength, and heaven help me, my stubbornness. She cupped his face in her hands, just as she did when he was a child. Family isn't just DNA, Ethan. It's love, it's choice, it's a daily commitment. Ethan felt tears burning his eyes. Like Robert and Catherine with me? And with Lily and Daisy? Exactly, Eleanor smiled, wiping away a tear that escaped down his cheek. Do you think it's mere coincidence you found two little girls in need of love just when you were ready to understand this truth about family? A noise in the corridor interrupted them. Lily appeared in the library door, already dressed for her piano lessons. Good morning, she said timidly, noticing the emotional atmosphere. Is everything okay? Ethan took a deep breath, trying to pull himself together. Yes, darling, we were just remembering some family stories. Lily walked into the library, her curious eyes scanning the shelves. Grandma Eleanor was telling me about when you were little. Oh, really? Ethan managed to smile despite the turmoil in his chest. And what did she say? That you also took a while to learn piano, Lily replied, with a small smile. But your parents never gave up on you. The simplicity of her observation struck Ethan like a wave. His parents had never given up on him, not when he was a baby who needed a family. Not when he destroyed Eleanor's roses trying to start a garden. Not when he horribly missed notes in his piano lessons. No, he agreed quietly. They never did. Eleanor touched his arm gently. And you're following in their footsteps perfectly. Lily watched their interaction with a wisdom beyond her years. Ethan, she said hesitantly, could you take me to my piano lesson today? Of course, he answered immediately, feeling a strange sense of calm. I'll just grab my coat. As he climbed the stairs to his room, Ethan heard Daisy's voice coming from the art studio, probably already awake and eager to paint. Hayes Manor came to life, little by little, just as it had every morning since the twins arrived. In his room, he paused in front of the mirror. The man looking back had Emily Carter's eyes and perhaps a father's unknown smile, but he also had the Hayes' bearing, Robert's determined jaw, and decades of unconditional love etched into every feature. Maybe Eleanor was right. Maybe his parents' greatest gift wasn't just giving him a name or a home, but teaching him through their own example that true love transcends blood and surnames. And now, with Lily waiting for her piano lesson and Daisy likely creating masterpieces with poster paint, he had the chance to pass on that lesson. Thank you, he whispered to his reflection, or maybe to Robert and Catherine, or to Emily Carter, or to all who had woven this complex tapestry of love and choices that made him who he was. Ethan, Lily's voice called from downstairs, we're going to be late. He smiled, grabbing his coat. Some truths hurt when revealed, but they also set us free. And sometimes we need to understand our own past to offer a better future to others. The week following the revelation of his adoption changed Ethan profoundly. Every moment with the twins carried new significance, and every memory of his own childhood felt refreshed under this new perspective. On Sunday morning, while watching Lily and Daisy play in the garden, he caught himself studying their faces with renewed attention. Lily, absorbed in her book even amid playtime, had the same seriousness Eleanor claimed Ethan had shown as a child. Daisy, running among the roses with joyful abandon, reminded him of what he just learned about his biological mother. Young, full of life, and facing difficult decisions with surprising courage. They're looking for a place to belong to, Eleanor said softly, joining him on the veranda. Just like you found yours. Ethan nodded. I've been thinking a lot about Robert and Catherine, about how it must have felt for them to choose to love me unconditionally, even knowing that one day I might question everything. True love always involves risks, dear. Eleanor adjusted the blanket on her lap. But some risks are worth taking. As if on cue, Daisy tripped on a stone in the grass, falling with a thump. Before any adult could react, Lily was already at her side, helping her up with that unique mix of firmness and gentleness only a sister can provide. "They're amazing, aren't they?" Ethan murmured, watching Daisy transform her tears into laughter as Lily pretended to examine the scraped knee with exaggerated seriousness. "Just like you," Eleanor smiled. "I remember the day Robert brought you home to the manor. You were so small, but your eyes already contained entire universes of possibility." Ethan turned to his grandmother. "Why did you never marry again after Grandpa Clarence?" Eleanor looked surprised at the shift in topic, but her eyes softened with understanding. "Because some people come into our lives to teach us that love doesn't have to follow a prescribed formula. Clarence gave me wonderful years, and Robert, and then you came along and filled my heart in ways I never knew possible." She paused meaningfully. "Sometimes the family we build is even more precious than the one we're born into." In the garden, Lily had convinced Daisy to sit on the swing, and now they were squeezing together on the small seat, their laughter echoing through the property. "Mr. Hayes," Harrison appeared discreetly on the veranda. "The documents you requested arrived from the law office." Ethan's heart skipped. He'd asked for a thorough outline of the legal adoption process, although he hadn't shared his thoughts with anyone yet, not even Eleanor. "Thank you, Harrison. Leave them in my office, please." Eleanor raised an inquisitive eyebrow, but said nothing, instead calling the girls in for afternoon tea. Later, alone in his office, Ethan studied the documents carefully. Requirements, procedures, evaluations. Everything looked both daunting and absolutely right. His gaze fell on a photo on his desk, taken a few days earlier. In it, he was seated at the piano with Lily, while Daisy drew on the bench beside them. The naturalness of the scene struck him. No forced poses, no artificial smiles, just three people sharing a moment of genuine happiness. A gentle knock on the door made him look up. Lily stood there, clutching her sheet music. "Ethan," she asked hesitantly, "can I practice here? Daisy is sleeping, and I don't want to wake her." "Of course," he replied quickly, stowing the adoption documents. "Come in, I'll show you a new piece." Adjusting the piano bench for Lily, Ethan noticed how she watched his hands carefully, imitating his posture. It was the same focused look he'd seen in old photos of himself with Robert. "You know," he began softly, "when I was little, I also struggled with certain notes." "Really?" Lily asked, her fingers nervously brushing the keys. "Yes, but my father, Robert, always said the important thing wasn't perfection, but the courage to keep trying." Lily was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. "Do you miss him?" "Every day," Ethan answered honestly. "But I've learned that the people we love never truly leave us. They live on in the lessons they taught us, in the memories we share." "Like our mom," Lily whispered, so softly Ethan almost missed it. His heart clenched. It was the first time Lily had mentioned her mother directly to him. "Do you want to tell me about her?" Lily hesitated, her fingers still resting on the piano keys. She liked music too. She'd take us to the park on Sundays and always sing while pushing Daisy on the swing. Her voice quivered slightly. But then she got sick, and Ethan gently placed his hand over hers. "It's okay. You don't have to say more if you don't want to." Lily nodded, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "Sometimes," she continued anyway, "when I play the piano, I feel like she can hear me." "I'm sure she can," Ethan said softly. "And I'm sure she's very proud of you." Lily turned to him, her eyes large and vulnerable. "Ethan, is it okay to like being here, even though I miss her?" Ethan felt his heart break and heal in the same moment. Oh, Lily, of course it is. Love isn't limited. We can miss someone and still open our hearts to new people. On an impulse, Lily hugged him, burying her face against his chest. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, realizing there was no turning back. His heart already belonged to these two little girls. That night, after the girls went to sleep, Ethan returned to his office. The adoption documents still waited in his drawer, but now he saw them with crystal clarity. Robert and Catherine had chosen him. Now it was his turn to choose, to offer Lily and Daisy the same unconditional love he'd been given. Picking up a pen, Ethan began filling out the preliminary forms. Each line he wrote was a silent promise, not only to the girls, but to his parents, who had taught him the true meaning of family. Hayes Manor lay still, but Ethan could feel the echoes of love and courage filling its ancient walls, tales of bold choices, open hearts, and families formed not by blood, but by love. And now he was about to add a new chapter to that story. Hayes Manor had always been grand, but in recent days it seemed to breathe new life. The sound of hammers and power tools echoed through the corridors as teams of workers transformed the twin rooms on the third floor. The walls that once silently witnessed decades of family history now watched a new era taking shape. Ethan oversaw the renovations with the same care he devoted to major corporate projects. Every detail was considered, not only in terms of functionality, but also significance. Daisy's art studio received walls painted in soft shades of blue, reminiscent of clear skies. Lily's music room was fitted with special acoustic paneling, its walls designed to resemble musical waves. "The curtains are in," Eleanor announced, stepping into what would be Daisy's room, carrying fabric samples in her arms. "Daisy's going to love these. They have little stars embroidered that glow in the dark." Ethan smiled, recalling the child's fascination with all things sparkly. "And the books for Lily's library? Harrison is organizing the shelves now. We managed to find first editions of the classics she adores." Watching his grandmother coordinate the final touches with the ease of someone who spent a lifetime caring for others, Ethan felt a wave of gratitude. Eleanor had embraced his decision to adopt the twins with an enthusiasm that only confirmed what he already knew. Family was far more than a matter of blood. "You know," Eleanor remarked, adjusting a framed picture on the wall, "Robert would be proud, not just of the Manor's makeover, but of yours." Ethan walked to the window, looking out at the garden below, where the twins played under Mrs. Rodriguez's watchful eye. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm enough for them." Eleanor laughed gently. "Oh, dear, your parents ask themselves the same questions about you. It's part of being a family, that mix of absolute love and constant doubts." In the garden, Daisy had just shown Lily something, probably another drawing. The older sister, by exactly 7 minutes, as they loved to point out, hugged Daisy with the protective care she always showed. "Yesterday," Ethan began, his voice quiet, "I found more letters in the trunk. Emily, my biological mother, wrote about her fears, her hopes, about how she wanted her baby to have not just a house, but a home." Eleanor moved closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. And he did, just as these two little girls will. The sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway broke their conversation. Lily appeared in the doorway, her cheeks flushed from running. "Ethan, Daisy painted something amazing. You have to see it." He smiled, letting himself be pulled by her small but determined hand. In the garden, Daisy stood at her easel, biting her lip nervously. The painting depicted Hayes Manor, seen through the eyes of a 5-year-old. But what caught Ethan's attention wasn't the whimsical architecture or the vibrant colors. It was how she had painted the people on the veranda. There they all were, Eleanor in her favorite chair, Lily at the piano. Daisy had decided to place outdoors, her child's logic ignoring physical constraints. Mrs. Rodriguez with a tray of cookies, Harrison watering the roses. and in the center, holding hands, were Daisy, Lily, and Ethan. It's our family," Daisy explained shyly. "Do you like it?" Ethan knelt beside her, feeling a lump form in his throat. "It's perfect, little one. Absolutely perfect." "Can I hang it in my new room?" she asked hopefully. "Actually," Ethan replied, "I think it should go in the main entrance so everyone can see it." Daisy's eyes widened. "Really? But what about all the important paintings?" "There's nothing more important than this," he said firmly, "because it shows our family, exactly as it is." That night, after the girls finally fell asleep in their temporary rooms, still reluctant to go to bed, too excited about moving into the new ones, Ethan wandered through the manor's corridors. Every corner seemed different now, filled not just with memories of the past, but with promises of the future. In his office, the adoption papers waited for the final signatures. The process would be lengthy, he knew, but some waits are worth enduring. Robert and Catherine had waited for him. Now it was his turn to wait and fight for his girls. The old key rested in its box on the desk, its initial mystery transformed into something else. It was no longer just an object that opened a trunk of past secrets, but a symbol of how fate sometimes works in mysterious ways, bringing together people who need one another. "The renovation's finished tomorrow," Eleanor commented from the doorway, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Just in time for the girl's birthday." Ethan took the cup, surprised. "How did you know it's their birthday?" Eleanor smiled mysteriously. "Lily mentioned it the other day while we were organizing books. 6 years old, a big milestone. The same age I was when I really started feeling like part of this family," Ethan reflected. "When I realized it didn't matter how I got here. This was my home. And now you can give them that same feeling." Ethan nodded, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced since discovering his adoption. Hayes Manor had always been more than just a house. It was a refuge for hearts in need of healing, a place where families could form in unexpected ways. "Do you think they'll be happy here?" he asked, almost to himself. "They already are," his grandmother answered simply. "Because, like you once did, they found not just a place to live, but people to love." Outside, night enfolded Hayes Manor in its familiar hush. Tomorrow, the new rooms would be ready. Tomorrow, another chapter would begin in the story of this growing family, one that flourished not through blood, but through love. And Ethan, child of Robert and Catherine by choice, grandson of Eleanor by love, and now about to become Lily and Daisy's father by the same miracle that had once brought him to the Hayeses, finally understood. Sometimes the best families are the ones we build, one heart at a time. Judge Thompson's office had the typical solemnity of legal settings, but on that autumn morning the place seemed to radiate a different kind of energy. Ethan straightened his tie for the 10th time, while Eleanor adjusted the bow in Daisy's hair with the same dedication she showed her prize-winning roses. Lily, impeccable in her navy blue dress, clutched Ethan's hand tightly. In the month since he began the adoption process, the girl had become even more protective, not just of Daisy, but of this new family they were building together. "Nervous?" Eleanor whispered to her grandson, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and amusement. "More than the day I took over as president of Hayes Enterprises," he admitted quietly. "Far more important than any company," Eleanor agreed, smoothing a stray lock of Daisy's hair. Judge Thompson, a middle-aged man with kind eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses, smiled as he reviewed the final documents. "Well, it looks like everything's in order," he announced, his warm tone easing some of the formality. "I just need to ask a few last questions." He turned to the twins. "Lily and Daisy, do you understand what's happening here today?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Ethan is going to be our dad forever." "Forever and ever," Daisy added confidently, making the adults smile. "And is that what you want?" the judge asked gently. The girls exchanged a glance, a moment of silent communication only twins seem able to have. Lily spoke, her small voice steady. "We're already a family. This will just make it official." Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. Eleanor discreetly handed him a handkerchief. "Mr. Hayes," the judge continued, "do you understand the legal and moral responsibilities you're assuming?" Ethan looked at the girls, at Lily, serious beyond her years and fiercely protective, at Daisy with her contagious joy and art that captured the essence of love. He thought of his adoptive parents, Robert and Catherine, how they had turned a legal decision into a lifelong journey of unconditional love. "I do, Your Honor," he answered. "In fact, I think I understand it better than most." The judge smiled, as though sensing a deeper meaning in his words. With a flourish of his pen, he signed the final documents. "Well then, it's my pleasure to make this adoption official. Lily and Daisy are now legally and permanently members of the Hayes family." Daisy immediately jumped into Ethan's arms while Lily hugged him tightly around the waist. Eleanor made no effort to hide her tears this time. "Now can we show him our present?" Daisy asked excitedly. Ethan raised an eyebrow at Eleanor, who simply shrugged with a knowing smile. The girls had spent the past week whispering with their great-grandmother, clearly planning something. Lily took a package from Eleanor's bag. It was a book wrapped in paper decorated with drawings, Daisy's handiwork obviously. Ethan opened it carefully, preserving the artwork. It was a photo album, but not just any photo album. On the cover, in letters Lily had painstakingly painted, were the words, "Our Family." The first pages held old photos, Robert and Catherine with baby Ethan, Eleanor in the rose garden. Precious childhood moments he hadn't even known were captured. Then there were the recent photos, the twins on their first day at the manor, still timid and fearful. Daisy proudly showing her first painting. Lily at the piano with Ethan. Eleanor telling stories in the garden. On the last page there was Daisy's drawing. Hayes Manor larger and more magical than reality, with all of them on the veranda. Below it, Lily had written in her neatest handwriting, "Family is where the heart chooses to be." "Grandma Eleanor helped us find the old pictures," Lily explained. "And I drew everyone," Daisy added proudly, "even Harrison and Mrs. Rodriguez, 'cause they're family too, right?" Ethan hugged both girls, feeling his heart overflow. "It's the most perfect gift in the world," he managed to say between tears. Back at the manor, a small celebration awaited. Mrs. Rodriguez had prepared all the girls' favorite treats, and Harrison had decorated the garden with delicate lights. The piano had been moved to the veranda, Daisy's idea, insisting Lily's music had to be part of the party. While the twins dashed through the garden with the boundless energy of childhood, Ethan joined Eleanor on her favorite swing. "You know what's funny?" he remarked, watching Daisy try to teach Harrison how to watercolor while Lily played a simplified version of Für Elise. "I spent weeks obsessed with that key, searching for what it might unlock. But in the end, it unlocked exactly what it needed to," Eleanor finished for him. "Your heart?" Ethan nodded. "When I found out about my adoption, I thought I'd lost my identity. But actually, you discovered an even bigger truth about who you are?" Eleanor smiled. Robert and Catherine's son by choice. Lily and Daisy's father by the same miracle. "Ethan," Daisy called from the garden. "Come see, I painted Harrison." "Poor Harrison," Eleanor laughed, watching the driver try to look flattered by Daisy's abstract portrait. Ethan stood but paused for a moment. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything." "Go," she urged him gently. "Your girls are waiting." Afternoon turned to evening, and the garden lights created an almost magical atmosphere. Lily had fallen asleep in Eleanor's lap, while Daisy fought off slumber in Ethan's arms. "Daddy," Daisy mumbled drowsily, using the word for the first time. "Can we do this again tomorrow?" Ethan kissed her forehead, his heart swelling at that single word. "What exactly?" "This, being a family, every day," he promised. "Forever and ever and ever," Daisy echoed with a yawn before finally surrendering to sleep. Ethan looked at his family, Eleanor cradling Lily, Daisy nestled in his arms, and Hayes Manor glowing behind them. The old key rested in its box in the library, its mystery finally solved. Because in the end, it didn't just unlock a trunk of past secrets. It opened the door to a future filled with love, acceptance, and the purest kind of family, the one chosen by the heart.